we're gonna give y'all a quick little breather, ladies and gentlemen, because we're gonna break it all down. We're gonna talk about this season, what our thoughts were as opposed to what we might have thought a couple months ago. But yeah, we will be right back.
Dun, 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 dun.
Let's go. The Washington Commanders. There it is. Yeah, buddy. We are back. Washington Football Weekly. I'm Sean Spencer. That's my guy, Will Kramer. And ladies and gentlemen, the season is done. We are finished with the year. We did not make the playoffs. We fell about a game and a half short. We went 8-1 in this season, ending going 1-3-1 over the last 5 games. And it might not be the way that we wanted to end it. We had some very good moments in that middle where we got some victories that might not have thought we were going to get, and some that we almost didn't get. But again, we were battling back after a tremendously poor start. So, Will, 8-1, 3 different quarterbacks. What are your thoughts, man?
I'm pretty darn disappointed. Not just because of the record and not making the playoffs. I mean, you and I had said 9-8 and teetering on 10-7, but we could also be a couple games below that too. I think what has me disappointed was you mentioned 3 quarterbacks started again for us. Yep. You know, we have had 9 starting quarterbacks in 3 years. And before that, we had even more when we were the Redskins. So, you know, so it's like, my gosh, we can't get one guy to play 17 games. Like, come on.
Right.
So that part's frustrating. But what really got me frustrated is Ron mentioned it at the beginning of the year. He put the pressure on himself this season. He said, year 3, time to show up, time to show that you made a difference. You know, and here we are, just like last year. You know, we were set up in December with some meaningful football games. All right, hey, win a couple games and you're in. And we went 1-3-1 to end the season. You know, we were 7-5 and end up 8-1. We had a chance where you win one game and you're setting yourself up to be in the playoffs. And we have a huge clunker against Cleveland. And yes, the quarterback play was terrible, but there were other parts of that game that were terrible. And so, I mean, thank goodness Sam Howell comes in and like makes us feel good about the final game and going into the offseason, because honestly, it's just a big disappointment that, okay, Ron, you've now had 3 years to be in control of this team. You've had 3 drafts here. Mm-hmm. What have you brought in football-wise to improve our team in a big sense? Because you've helped us clean out some of the riffraff. You know, your owner still makes headlines for stupidity stuff, but you've cleaned up some of the culture stuff. You've kind of, you made us a little bit less of a joke of a franchise football wise. The business side is still terrible.
Still terrible.
But let's also look at the last 3 years that you've been GM and who you've been bringing in, and how many of his guys, what the junkies say last week, of the guys that were selected to the Pro Bowl, none of them came from Ron Rivera. They were all Redskins.
Oh, wow.
You know, Jeremy Reeves, Jonathan Allen. These guys are all Tress Way, all Redskins.
Yeah.
So Ron's had 3 drafts, and, you know, we've got a couple pieces in place there. Jahan Dotson looks good. You know, Jamin Davis is emerging a little bit. Cam Curl's a good player. So it's not that he hasn't brought in good players.
Yeah.
But in your 3rd year, you want to see a bigger trend and a bigger arc than what he's got. So it's a pretty disappointing end to the year.
Yeah, it is. And it just felt like we had opportunities. This year to me is about all the missed opportunities. I mean, obviously we can start with the 3 separate quarterbacks. And, you know, again, like I mentioned on my last part, putting all this hope and all this faith and getting a quarterback, and he's supposed to be our savior. He's supposed to be the guy, without even really breaking it down. Like, is this guy, does he fit for our system? And I sent you the clip of us talking about Carson Wentz at OTAs, and so many people came after us because we were saying, you know, he looks like he's struggling. Well, what we saw is that, he was struggling. He was struggling to pick it up, and it never kind of worked itself out. it just frustrates me. I mean, you get to the first part of the season, and you just the Dallas game. We know the penalties came in, but that Eagles game, one minus that second quarter, we did look decent, but we couldn't get anything else to really build up on. You know what I mean? That first half, I was in Detroit. That first half of the Detroit game was awful. That was just, I mean, we were a joke. You know what I mean? We couldn't get anything done. And it just, those kind of missed opportunities. The Vikings game, I mean, the fact that I had to sit here and hear you like that from Cat 100 daggone times was terrible. But we were up 17-7 in this ball game. That point, they were, one of the, number 2 seed and one of these top tier teams, and we shut them down. But again, it was our mistakes that gave them the ability to get back in that game and win it. That's the one. That Titans game that I was at too, well, it's going to haunt me. It's going to haunt me because that one to me, even with everything that had happened in that game, my guy De'Ami Brown falls out and gets himself in the end zone. Everything that I saw, it still comes back to that last drive because the clock management on that drive was poor. Us even driving down there, a couple plays that we might they could have very easily been shut down that we don't even have an opportunity to get down the field. But then you get all the way down the field, and I mean, I videotaped it. I showed that to you. Carson just looked his one way the whole entire time. It wasn't even a pan. It was just a frustrating thing, and to end it that way. There were too many of those games that I felt like we do have talent. We can put it together at times. We've said bend but don't break all year, and I think our defense impressed me because we were very young in the secondary and very limited at linebacker, but we were able to hang with a lot of these top teams, and we were doing good, but we just could not get it done when we needed to get it done. And that is something that really is frustrating me because of the fact that we talk about the talent we have, and I know, the line and everything's been an issue, but there's certain moments where you need those teams that are in the playoffs right now, they make the necessary wins. When Dallas loses a game, what did they do to Minnesota? They put up 40 on them and held them 3. You know what I mean? When teams lose, then they come back those next couple weeks and ball out. I felt like we had a couple games where we were able to come back and get the dub, but these last 3 weeks, it's like as soon as everybody got built up and got hyped and 7-5-1, here we go, or 7-5, here we go. You tie, go on a bye week, and then come out worse than you were at before the bye week and losing to the Giants. And we just couldn't get it together after that. It's the word of the day is frustrating for me because yes, we went 8-1. Yes, we did decently well. There was bright spots, absolutely. But when you think about the momentum we had, we should be in at least the 6th or 7th spot right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm frustrated, man. I'm frustrated by it. But what's some positives? Let's get some positives on how this season was.
Oh man, I had some more negatives. Can I go back to the negatives? Sorry. Well, I think sorry, you brought up a great point about the bye. And the whole point of we came off a bye week against the same exact opponent, and our game plan didn't change. And theirs did. We pointed out what they did differently from the first game to the second and how they attacked us and took away things. And we just kind of said, well, this is our bread and butter. And you talk about frustrating. That's part of it, is the fact that we had this team that was set up where we could not overcome mistakes. The only game that I really can sit here and say that I was proud of us watching was when we went to that Monday nighter in Philly, where I was like, man, we're dominating these guys. We are physically abusing these guys. And yet, most of the other games, it's like, we not only would we have lulls in each game, but when we would have mistakes, it's like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be able to surpass this, and also the fact that we went 8-1, you also got to recognize that it could have been worse. I mean, the Bears game, we stopped them at the 1. The Falcons game, we knocked the ball up in the air. They also got really, really fortunate to win those 8 games. So we could have been teetering. Now, if you want a positive, you got to give, the fact that the team, you got to give the team credit for the fact that they started off, in a downward swing. They brought themselves out of it. They got to 7-5. That's a whole testament to the team. The
Absolutely.
Week 18, the fact that most Redskin teams under Mike Shanahan, under Jay Gruden, by the end of the season, if they were kind of out of it, or even if we weren't, we had a game against the Giants, win and you're in, and we played clunkers. And Ron's team didn't do that. So you do also have to give some positives there. And I think Nathan brought up other bright spots or their strides. I think we've brought in some more pieces. I think we've seen Brian Robinson is a player to build around. He's a running back to feature, next season. Jahan Dotson was a home run draft pick, to fit with Terry, And so that type of stuff, we've got some pieces in place. The defense made a comeback this year. Yeah. Our defensive line played a lot better. I even saw, on Sunday, I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. Chase Young on a play allowed Montez Sweat to be the guy who made the play. He started rushing. He stopped and held his ground. He let his teammate come from the backside to get the stat.
Exactly.
And that's what we were talking about last year that didn't happen. He would just keep rushing. So the defense made some improvements this year. Still got some work to do there, but they bounced back after a pretty bad 2021 season. So there were some positives, definitely. It's just you and I see more potential, and we just didn't reach that potential.
Yes. And it's like you said, I mean, not even just turnovers, but penalties. Any loss of yardage, anything, we could not overcome that, and it showed. It showed a lot throughout the season. And going back to you talking about our wins, you go back to that Colts game. That Colts game, that deep ball to Terry McLaurin, if that doesn't happen, if that goes like we think it's going to go, we lose to a terrible Colts team. So there was a number of these games where you were frustrated, and then you go to the Eagles game and you're like, here we go. But to your point, I number one for me was the resiliency. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter about the coaches are terrible, the coaches are this, that. From the beginning, this year could have been derailed. And ladies and gentlemen, we can go all the way back to the OTAs and everything when Jack Del Rio came out and said, it wasn't, things about January 6th. Oh yeah, it was a dust up, this and that. So and that could have easily, destroyed the season even before it started. But Ron Rivera made sure everybody was in. Jack Del Rio addressed the team, and we moved on. Sam Mills III earlier in the year. We could have easily kept him and just overlooked that, but they got him out because it didn't gel with the players. We weren't down 1-4. We barely beat the Bears. We basically came out of that game as a loss, and we lost our quarterback, but we still continue to play even with the backup. So I feel like our resiliency this year was amazing. Now I do think when we got to 7-5, we started to believe our own hype, and then it just kind of bed, you know what I mean? It just went downhill from there. But I mean, to your point, man, our defense that bend but don't break became more of a, maybe a little lean. Like we played tough. One of the things that I thought was huge, and one of the moves going back to getting people out of here, we got out William Jackson III. We made that move, but I thought that's humbling to be like, we made a mistake. We misjudged, or we thought he would be good for this, and it didn't work out. They were able to then get rid of him, and you and I both talked. The communication was so much better. Yeah. Our secondary is extremely young. We discussed that a lot this year, especially recently with a lot of these rookies getting in there. And I'm going to tell you, in this game, that secondary came correct, with the exception of the drive right before the half. Like our secondary was shutting it down, and I love that. I think that's key, because that has been the issue all year. I mean, we know our D line is it, and our linebackers. When we had our guy Cole Holcomb in there, we're getting it done per se, but our secondary has been struggling. I got to tell my guy Cole Holcomb, let's go. I got to bring him back. Let's go. But our secondary we've been getting torched over the top in almost every game, and late in the later last couple of games, even though we weren't getting the dubs, we weren't getting torched. This last game, CD didn't get behind us like he did a lot in that first game. You know what I mean? That was huge, and that's something that we've really been complaining about a lot this year, is our secondary. And the fact that they showed up and kind of turned that thing around, That to me was huge. That's something that you can build on. We didn't have St. Just. Cam Curl was out he was injured at 2 different points of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And we still were able to kind of come together and play well. So there we go. I like that because that says that these are all things that you can build on going into the future, going into the offseason.
Pretty much. I mean, it's good. The positive is we can spell out very quickly the places we need to improve. Yeah. Linebacker, we need another corner, we need offensive line. So it's not. It makes it so you would think that they can figure out where their issues are too and attack it through free agency and through the draft, knowing that we're not going to have as much cap space as we did last year, but we are going to have, the $26-28 million that come off the books when Carson's, gets released, so we can reallocate that, but also trying to figure out, what it all depends on what they do with Deron Payne and what does he get. But our deficiencies are very easy to pinpoint. So let's fix them then.
Yeah, we need to. We absolutely need to. It's pretty much right in there. Are you good with this? Mm-hmm. Are you good with our thoughts?
I'm ready to talk coaches, man.
Oh, yeah. It's going to happen. And look, ladies and gentlemen, we will dive into more of this. Since the offseason has begun, we're going to start talking roster construction, free agency, the draft, all of these things. So definitely stay tuned for that. Wait a minute. I do want to talk about this. He said, I predict they will sign Deron Payne. We've talked about all year how he's been playing like he wants money. And there's several reports that says he's not shy about saying he wants his contract. So what do we do? I mean, can we afford to not pay the man, or what do you think is going to happen?
I think the best bet they might get is getting him on a franchise tag. Is getting him to come back for a year. I don't know if they'll be able to get him long term, so I'd love for them to surprise me with that. Yeah. The biggest thing I think is going to be if Deron wants to stay here. Brandon Sheriff did not. They went after him last year, and he said, I've been around here. And think about it. Deron Payne went from Alabama, where he barely lost, to he's been in Washington for 5 seasons, and he's made the playoffs 1 time. Yep. Is this where he really wants to play? Does he want to say, I'm 25 years old, I want to play here for the next 4 or 5 years. My coaches might get fired the following year, and then who knows what's going on. Or can he go somewhere else, get paid, and try out a different team? So, I hope that they re-sign him. I kind of feel like they've got something going there with Allen and Payne, even more so than years past. Mm-hmm. I think the only way to do it is franchise tag.
Yep. We shall definitely see. I do know that having Jonathan Allen there, having maybe bringing back John Bostic, and then Brian Robinson, you got these Alabama guys.
John Bostic's not from Bama.
Is he? Where did he go to FSU? Oh, that's on me. My bad. Who's the other guy? Didn't we have 3 guys on defense?
We had Reuben Foster. He's long gone.
That's not him thinking. I'm thinking about somebody else. But
John Bostic might have been Florida, actually.
He might have been.
College career, University of Florida.
I feel like we had this conversation before. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
There's other Bama players, yeah.
But it is, there's other. And mainly Jonathan Allen. And their friendship and their connection. I think that hopefully, he'll want to stay with him. I mean, they are a tandem in that middle. And I think, with the threat of Jonathan Allen and how he's played, Deron Payne has been able to play off that really well. Then you got Sweat, and then next year, hopefully a healthy Chase. I mean, it would be a formidable front 4 if he does stay, but it's not going to be cheap, like you said.
So, right, it's going to be very expensive.
So we shall definitely see.
Thanks for watching. If you like that clip, be sure to check out the other great content from the Let's Talk Football community. And as always, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when more great content like this becomes available.